Order, come to order. We are now here for part two of the trial of the people versus VTuber Sinder. Justice Stevenson residing, and previously, ladies and gentlemen, when we were taking a look through Cinder's response, shall we call it, last time it seemed to be a lot of back and forth between her and Redacted, and now we move on to what appears to be something that probably Cinder should have made first and foremost, her apology and taking accountability. So this one is a little bit longer, so let's get straight to it. As we're going to call it Exhibit B, I think, for this point. Now that I've reviewed everything that happened and had time to reflect on my own actions, there are some details I need to point out and corrections I need to make for my apology. Then I'll go over the things Red or I, or both of us, did wrong so we can take responsibility. Each section after this will explain the full story around each major individual involved, anything Red and I did, and defending ourselves against everything we didn't do. Quotes from my apology will present throughout this document to show that they were in reference to. Screenshots that are directly or of taken from documents are highlighted with an orange border. Dates and important messages within any screenshots are highlighted in yellow. Quotes from my apology are highlighted in grey. Red's own comments on anything being presented are labelled are highlighted in blue. And yes, again, I went over this last time, the irony of somebody referring to themselves as red and they're highlighted in blue. Yeah. So let's just get straight to it. My apology for reference, posted the 27th of April 2025 at 4:16 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And it's here, by the way, for the world to see. The things I claimed and admitted to in my apology were based on what I knew at the time. What was published in everyone else's document and what Red told me right after, I shut him out when I shouldn't have. I made my apology without his help, without all of the info in front of me, and without knowing the full scope of what happened, how it happened, or what to believe. I was under extreme stress and pressure to say something as soon as I could, and was expected to accept fault for everything I was accused of, but not guilty of doing. Some of the things I wrote were overly apologetic, and I made things sound worse than they actually were because of the severity of the situation. AKA, I was sorry, but I wasn't fully sorry for the things that I was saying that I was saying sorry for. Already, Cinder, you're making this sound incredibly confusing, and you explain, please, Cinder. Please explain this to me. The main takeaway people had from my apology was that I pushed everything onto Red and didn't take accountability for anything myself. What I blamed Red for in my apology, because he was guilty of doing them, him telling me how great it would be to work together with Silvervale, him holding a grudge against Bao. What I blamed Red for in my apology, when I was also guilty. Red was the one with the business-oriented outlook on things from the start. I adopted that same mindset myself from working together as time went on. I wrongly made it sound like I was brainwashed into thinking this way in my apology. What Red was guilty of in my apology that I didn't know about until writing it. Red and Nano were ever talking about a model for Giri in November 2023. Red including Bao and Cotton in his conversation and eventual deal with Nano around exclusivity in January 2025, and bad-mouthing Bao in their DMs as if they were our shared feelings. Red talking to Nano about Shy Lily and her model in April 2025. Things I said about Red in my apology that I was wrong about. He did not manipulate Nano. He did not push Nano to work with Silvervale, and she was not a constant topic between them. Things I took accountability for in my apology. always the sign of a very, very insecure person when they felt the need to actually spell out word for word the things they said that they had done. And taking accountability involves having to list them off word by word, almost as though you're doing this out of some means of forced obligation, as opposed to actually just doing them and letting your actions speak for yourself. Which is one of the things I'm coming to terms with this whole document, is that if Cinder had just, I don't know, put her hands up, said sorry, got on with it, and made ways to actually repent for the things that she herself did, I would suggest she should have just got on with it and done it. Because this has a bit of a desperate tinge to it, if you ask me. This is honestly not the sort of thing I would do. But let's continue, shall we? Things I took accountability for in my apology. 1. Agreeing with Red to talk with Nano about exclusivity, agreeing to specifically name Silvervale in the terms, and knowing a deal involving her was made. 2. Guilt-tripping Nano. 3. Feeling overly attached to Nano and her work. 4. Not knowing about what Red had said about Bao to Nano when I should have. 5. Not speaking to Bao about Red's feelings towards her and letting it spiral to the point it did. 6. Being upset and taking it personally when Bao hired my video editor. 7. Being upset when Sakamore told us he wouldn't be working with us again. 8. Confiding in Red about Shy Lily's behaviour towards me. 9. Becoming resentful towards Silvervale. 10. Letting my insecurities and public comments influence my feelings towards Silvervale. 11. Assuming Spite copied me. 12. Being very possessive of my design details early on in my career. 13. Overreacting to Nyan Tails' Hellhound OC design, which was apologized for in the past. 14. Cheating on my boyfriend. 15. Neglecting or leaving behind friends of mine. Okay, and once again, 2 things I need to state once again. 1. In spite of everything you've listed, Cinder, it's still not great. Because why would you want to do why would you want to do any of these things in the first place? Because at some point down the line, the logic in your mind must have thought that it was absolutely the right thing to do, or you thought you did it because you know you could get away with it. You could say sorry and you could say you took accountability all you like, Cinder. The fact is that it still happened. Now, with that being said, I'm not involved. If Nano or Shy Lily or Silvervale or Bao, if they apologized and forgave you, Cinder, then you know what? That would be that I would say that would be case closed and everyone can move on. But even then, it's also about the way the public have perceived your behavior, Cinder, and it hasn't changed whatsoever just because you say, by the way, I said I did all of this. So, and again, yeah, this comes across as more like obligatory, like checking off a list, as opposed to letting these things speak volumes. But let's keep going. I admitted to the world that I cheated on my secret boyfriend, and the story pushed was that I took no accountability and used him as a scapegoat. Even with all of these concessions of what I did do, I was still somehow a narcissist who couldn't accept fault. What I did was not admit to the right things. The people making these claims already decided I was guilty of. They also expected me to apologize for everything I've done without any of it ever being mentioned, even if the matter was already settled in the past. Well, who was the one who brought them up, Cinder? I understand that the things my manager did that I didn't know about are ultimately my responsibility, and my ignorance doesn't change that. I should have taken more care to check up on what he was saying and doing, but I was being blamed publicly for things I had nothing to do with. My accusers went out of their way to claim Cinder did this and Cinder did that, completely disregarding Red's agency from any of his own words and actions. I think that was because they were saying you did them, Cinder, not Red. I think that's the whole point. The proof I must have known about everything he's ever said and done was because they said we worked on things together on our phones during the few times a year we were travelling. And Nano's document showed two of my screenshots from over a year apart from separate situations where I knew more or less what had happened between her and Red. There was no other evidence presented for their claim, but they told everyone it absolutely had to be this way. Emphasis was placed on Red's usage of we and our, as if they could know for a fact that it meant Red was always speaking with my knowledge, approval, and oversight every single time he said it. This was necessary for their narrative to work against me. This is what I said in my apology about this. I do not condone anything about what Red said about Bao in these DMs either, and him using we and our in this context is abhorrently incorrect and I believe was done to gain greater credibility behind what he was saying. Red. I have always been more or less the creative lead on things we did, like model designs, project ideas, and art in general, and Cinder often agreed with my creative judgment. She trusted me to do the communication I did for her without oversight. For example, a lot of times I would be the one talking to the artists we were working with who only knew me as Cinder's manager. If I knew the direction I wanted to take something, with or without talking to Cinder beforehand, and I said, I want this to be like this, instead of Cinder wants this art to be like this, then it felt like an awkward thing for me to say. In my mind, instead to the person we're working with, I'm just the manager, not the creator, not the streamer, not their client. What I myself wanted wasn't important. What Cinder wanted was. So, in order to give weight to what I would say, I started using we early on, without speaking for her directly saying, Cinder, if we wanted to do something in a certain way, then I'd give my agency by implying that we both agreed on and made the decision. That Cinder was aware of the decision being made, regardless of it, she actually was or wasn't at the time, and that my words had meaning. I was speaking on we, the brand's, behalf. It became a habit of mine to talk this way regarding any projects or business dealings. I didn't start doing this because anyone told me I should be. I didn't speak like this all the time or in every single message. It's not like Cinder never knew about what I was saying when saying we. If afterwards she did disagree with me on something, then I'd have to walk back what I said and say that Cinder actually wants it this way. For example, very often Cinder was on the same page as me beforehand, or we would agree with what I said without her knowledge using we afterwards. Red, all you had to do, Red, to stop this from happening is that you always talked with Cinder and you both always sorted it when you were in the exact same vicinity. This is not good. This is not good business management. In the case of the exclusivity deal with Nano, I used we when talking about Bao, so it seemed like Cinder also backed how I felt. Cinder not only wasn't aware of this, but I knew she didn't agree with me about what I was saying. In our conversation, Nano said herself that she was not really down with working with people who Cinder didn't want her to. So, I made sure to tell Nano how we felt expressing my own feelings to her as if they were from the both of us. This will all be shown in Nano's section. There are three things in my apology I need to correct that will be shown in full detail in this document. Missing information, lies, and incorrect statements in my apology. 1. I left out a lot of information regarding my experience with Silver Veil in trying to overly apologize to her and ended up making things sound much worse than what really happened. 2. I lied about not knowing that Red spoke to Nano about Spite in 2023 to not make things worse for myself by revealing more than Nano or Spite did about what happened regarding her. 3. I was wrong about which year the situation with Nyan Tails took place in. I wrote that it was after my debut, but it was actually an entire year earlier. Bravo! Like, okay. My apology and the accusations made against me did not cover everything Red and I have done wrong. I've laid out everything below that will be presented throughout this document so we can address them and take responsibility. Explaining the motives and reasoning behind our actions are not meant to justify or diminish them or the feelings of those affected, but to understand why they happened. Everything one of us or both of us are guilty of, that accountability is taken for and shown in this document, in the order they're presented in. 1. We both became neglectful of many friendships and personal relationships online and IRL. 2. Red and I became consumed by our work and prioritized my career over all else. 3. Red considered everyone, including our friends, competition to some degree, and I agreed. 4. Red and I left Tricky at our hotel in Tokyo one day during our Japan trip in October 2024. 5. I chose to distance myself from Cotton after what happened between her and a friend. 6. I tried going back to an agreement with the artist Nixu in April 2025. 7. Red asked Nano to not work with Spite in January 2023 and told me about it afterwards. I lied about not knowing he spoke to her about Spite in my apology to avoid talking about it. 7. Red initially dissuaded Nano from accepting a model from Geary in November 2023. 8. I guilt-tripped Nano in November 2023 and February 25, but still sided with her. 9. Red reassured Nano about her considering and cancelling Bao's model in August of 2024. 10. I knew Bao's model was cancelled in August of 24 and didn't try to do anything about it. 11. Red and I agreed to talk with Nano about exclusivity, including not to work with Silvervale, specifically on any more models in January of 25. 12. Red and Nano agreed to a deal for her not to work with Silver, Bao, or Cotton in January of 25, only telling me about Silvervale's inclusion. 12. Red spoke to Nano about Shy Lily in April of 25 after seeing Nano work on a model for her, and never told me about this conversation. 13. We asked our video editor about exclusivity after Bao started working with them in September of 23. 14. Red convinced himself Bao gatekept her video editor to hurt our future music video productions in December of 24, then held a grudge and list of grievances against her. 15. I didn't speak to Bao to clear things up about what I knew Red held against her, and it led to me being an awful friend to her for months at the start of 25. 16. Both Red and I mismanaged the planning and communication with Numi about her concert at the start of February of 2025. I pulled out of performing in a show and almost didn't go after choosing business over my friend. 16. We both grew to dislike Silvervale over the past few years for various reasons, including harassment and comparisons, my own insecurities, and how Silvervale acted towards me. 17. Red asked an artist not to work with Silvervale in March 25 and never told me about it. 18. Red and I assumed Spite was copying me in 2022 and early 23. And 19. I overreacted to Neon Tails Hellhound OC design in 2021. Also, hang on, can we just backtrack a few seconds? You abandoned your friend at a hotel in Tokyo one day during a trip in October 20. And listen, I've watched Tricky Wii for a good few years. You abandoned your friend in a foreign city? Who does that? I know I'm sounding like I'm exasperating about that of all things, but like I said, I've watched Tricky stuff. I know exactly. I know what she's like, and yeah, what a shitty thing to do. The fact that you and Red both left her alone, abandoned her at a hotel, like, what did Tricky have to say to that? That's dreadful. Uh, yeah, that's honestly, that's just bad. That every claim of wrongdoing that was made against Red or I that isn't listed above is not true. Whether it was an assumption or a lie in someone's document statement about me or verbally on stream, I would list the false accusations here. But there's been such a ridiculous amount at this point that I don't even know where to start. I will let this document speak for itself. Oh, don't worry, Cinder, it's doing a great job there. These actions were not over years like the public was told. The majority of these actions happened in an 8 month span from August 24 to April 25. How each person was affected, if they were affected at all, I don't really think, even if it didn't really affect them at all, I don't think that's the point. The point is that you admitted that you knew it was wrong, and yet you and Red still did it anyway. So, case in being, you abandoning Tricky at a hotel in a foreign city is explained throughout this document. Nothing was black and white, and none of these actions were motivated by jealousy, envy, greed, or being malicious for the sake of it. Alright then, so why did you abandon Tricky in a foreign city then? Go on, explain that one then. My friends. It's been falsely claimed that I was using, manipulating, sabotaging, betraying, and backstabbing all of my friends for years in an effort to deplatform them and ruin their careers. There was never some kind of years long grand conspiracy of deceit against anyone, and I have never pushed the ladder down behind me. You kind of have those spites. That's especially towards spite. I have never been jealous or envious of any of my friends or anyone else. So why are you telling what? So what's this all about? Red trying to do exclusivity deals between between video editors to not work with certain other people. Why would you want to do that? That sorry, Cinder. At that point, I would have dropped Red completely because that's and listen, Cinder. You may say what that's. But then we could go back to the old accusation of you just saying all this so you can throw Red under the bus. And then again, Cinder, I don't. I'm sorry. This is not adding up in my opinion. My friends were not stepping stones I used to further myself. I love my friends. Yeah, and apparently you also love your manager, your on and off boyfriend, who you and him have cheated on each other. So what's why? What do you what where do your priorities really lie, Cinder? Our experiences together were real. Our memories together are real. It hurts that I even need to say that here. There are plenty of things my friends know I've done for them, helped with them, or included them in for no other reason than that they were my friends. I've always answered their questions and offered them advice when they've asked, done my best to be there and support them at their debuts with their own endeavors. And I've personally bought so much of their merch for myself without even saying so. I literally bought brownies my mom made across the country to share with them. I spent my own time making one of a kind cosplay pieces of their VTubers for them for no other reason that they were my friends. More than the three finished pieces below were planned for more of my friends, including Bao, before I put all of my crafting efforts and focuses into my Nihilista cosplay. It meant a lot to me that I could make things that meant a lot to them. I don't know what they think I did against them other than what I've listed above, or where these ideas came from, or what rumours they were hearing about me, or how my friends collectively agreed this must have been the case after everything we've done and shared with each other. I absolutely could have been a much better friend, but I just can't believe every single one of them thought this little of me at a moment's notice. There were about a dozen of my friends involved before Nano's document was posted, and still not one of them said anything to me before they were posted publicly. A lot of my friendships did suffer due to where my priorities have been, especially over the course of 2024. Because of my focus being overwhelmingly on work, and less on my personal relationships outside of it. I neglected people I cared about, and so did Red, both online and IRL. Even my closest friends, unless it was about work, I didn't put as much energy into just talking and hanging out. But that's not to say I never did, never wanted to, or disliked them for any reason. I had my things going on, and I know they had theirs. Guys, can I just ask a question? And I really need to ask this because I feel like I won't really bring a. You know when Sinder said that she and Red worked on this. Was there at any point when they were writing all of this out, were they writing this with their fingers crossed behind their backs? Because for some reason I feel like this is coming across as though they were almost doing it like this, hoping that people would buy into this. Because you know what? You know what? I don't, and I'm continuing to uphold my one-sided approach, and I'm going to explain I'll sort of explain why towards the end, because, well, as I said before, there were probably better ways to handle this whole situation. Drop Red and do better things, Cinder. Move on. Do things for the betterment of other people, for all the people you've hurt, and specifically for the people you yourself have hurt, Cinder. Not anything involving Red. Anyway, where was I? When I wasn't streaming or working on something, I'd be isolating or hanging out with Red to decompress, and I didn't have the energy to socialize. I tried to plan collabs with my friends as often as I could, and it was a way to hang out while still appeasing my content brain. My collabs with my friends were made into YouTube videos, but to say that I was using them for that, as if countless other VTubers don't do the same thing, is crazy. When I was traveling to see my friends, all I wanted to do was hang out and spend as much time together as I could, and it was the happiest I was. Red and I always loved, valued, looked out for, and appreciated our friends, even if we didn't show it as often as we should have. I'm sorry to those of my friends who I haven't given the time they gave me. I'm so sorry for those I haven't spoken to in a long time for no other reason than my own negligence. And I'm sorry to my friends that I only focused on work with and didn't spend enough time being your friend outside of it. The business mindset. Red and I slowly became more closed off and neglectful over the past couple years, but especially throughout 2024, focusing more and more of our time and energy on this career. Work became almost 24/7 for us, never taking a break. It was our job, our hobby, and almost all we talked about. We loved what we did, but we both became consumed by the content grind. Our work life balance became non existent. We were going and going and going all day, every day as a two-person team, working to an obsessive degree. We were always trying to do more with more people all the time. Everything became about doing bigger things, achieving more, accomplishing more, growing bigger, launching more cool things, having more opportunities, while keeping up with at least 4 to 5 streams a week. Our problem wasn't greed, like it was claimed, it was ambition. Ambition that was wearing us too thin to keep up with everything, but it was never enough to take a step back and relax. We were always looking ahead, always had to be progressing, and never stopped to appreciate where we were, or the people around us. The money was nice, but it's never been the driving factor for anything we did. It was an indicator of a successful project, event, or merch drop that anyone understood. The majority of what I've made and spent went back into my work, or towards the house my dad had been building. I've released a lot of merch, and it's something Red and I have both been passionate about. Coming up with and releasing cool, new merch products is one of the most fun and fulfilling things to work on, and being on new products like a drink flavor or trading card game was super exciting to us. It was always about launching cool things for my community over the money it made. I've turned down merchandise opportunities and many more sponsorship opportunities than I've ever expected, only taking on those I really wanted or had a strong interest in, even though a lot of them were paying very well. Being a greedy, money hungry person has been falsely projected onto me. It's never been all about the money for either of us. One instance I may be called out for regarding this was during my Heaven Hound model debut. During my lore video, I had an intermission where my chat needed to fill a gold bar on screen with bits to progress the video. It was the easiest way for me to implement interactivity into the debut, and my chat having direct involvement by cheering me on was important to the story being shown. The motivation wasn't to have people give me money for the sake of it. This mindset got myself and my career to where it was, but it took over our lives to an unhealthy degree, leading to the deterioration of our health and relationships with people. Being cancelled and away for work gave us the time to address this problem in our personal lives. For example, I have my own dog now who's been keeping me busy. I've gone back into cosplay after not working with my Nihilista build for months. I've been trying to lead a healthier lifestyle, and I've been going to the gym regularly. Despite finding it difficult to be motivated about things since April, I've been making changes so I don't fall back into the same unhealthy work mindset I was in. You mean you unable to be motivated since April? Yeah, when everything came full circle, and actually it came out that, to be honest, Cinder, your smiles didn't really paint the full story. Competition. In my apology, I said I'm disgusted with myself for buying into the narrative that my friends were competition. I just learned about all this myself, and they could have been so many other friends affected by the narrative that things always had to be competitive. Red always considered everyone our competition, including my friends. I understood and agreed with his reasoning below. It didn't change anything between my friends and I, even though you just said you agreed with him, and I didn't treat them any differently because of it, even though you just said you agreed with Red, saying that they are your competition. So which one is it, Cinder? Because I don't quite understand. The only person I became directly competitive against was Silvervale. Oh, that's right, because you didn't even consider Spite or Bow your competition anymore. You thought they were beneath you because you took away advantages that they should have had. And that wasn't right of me. But even though you just said you agree with Red, I'm just getting on with this. Red. The content creation sphere is massive, and the VTuber sphere is a fraction of that with its own audience. Everyone is always doing something, launching something, playing something, and it's a constant race of relevancy whether you want to look at it that way or not. It's the nature of the industry. Part of the reason why we were always working on new things, releasing bigger things at a faster and faster rate was to stay competitive in this space. In a general sense, everyone was competition, friends, other VTubers, and other content creators. But at the same time that anyone and everyone could be considered competition, there were also collaborators, co workers, and partners. The end goal was about staying relevant and in people's minds, and making sure our projects could succeed alongside anything going on at any given time, while also topping our own things we've done in the past. At no point was this view ever motivation or any excuse to hurt, take advantage of, or put down creators around us, especially friends. This is a business, it's a job, but keeping the business aspect of things in mind didn't affect the way I saw our friendships with people or the way I treated them. Even though you just said that they were your competition and that it's only business. Sorry, yeah, Red, you're full of shit as well. I don't buy that for 1 second. They were my friends too, and we both cared about them, supported them, and helped them out the way they needed it. I've always had the backs of the people closest to us. You see what I'm doing, guys? I'm this is Red trying to butter me up. By the way, trying to make us feel. I don't buy it. The only people I've ever considered as direct competition in the negative sense were people either we had something against, or they had or did something against us, and were working with artists important to us. By April of 25, this was only Silvervale from how she acted towards Cinder for years. Bow after what I thought she did to us and our other friends in December of 24, but only until sometime after my deal with Nano in January of 25, and potentially soon to be Lily by the way she was treating Cinder, and coincidentally getting a model from Nanoless at the same time. It was wrong of me to feel this way, especially towards Bow. And Lily and Silvervale. Red, it's not just Bow you ought to be saying sorry to. Meanwhile, there's also the case of what I mentioned before involving Tricky. Here, I want to address the people Red and I heard that don't have a larger section in this document. You mean the people who didn't come out with things against you, but they probably will do. I'm surprised Tricky didn't think about giving a response about what happened. Tricky. My friends Red and I travelled to Japan last year. About a week into our trip around the country, we arrived in Tokyo for the last few days there. Red, Tricky, and I were all talking about going to the Godzilla store the night we arrived, but other plans left us with no time to go. The next morning, Red and I were up super early and were ready to leave the hotel around 8 or 9 a.m. We waited in our hotel room for about an hour without hearing from Tricky at all. Because we only had a few days left in Japan, Red and I wanted to make the most of our remaining time. We were around friends all week and didn't have much, if any, time alone together in Japan either. Oh, what a hard life. The other half dozen of us there either had their own plans or were still sleeping too. There were other friends staying at the same hotel as Red, Tricky, and I, so instead of waiting around for Tricky to wake up, we selfishly chose to go out into the city and to the Godzilla store without her. By the time Tricky was awake and ready to leave the hotel, Red and I were across the city and didn't go back to get her. We only met up with her towards the end of the day when everyone reconvened somewhere. Red and I are so sorry to Tricky for leaving her behind and hurting her. We've always been there for her, especially when we've travelled together. We didn't think she'd be left completely alone with how many of us were going together in Tokyo, but we still should have waited for her instead of going off on our own. She was one of our best friends, and we're both so sorry. Cottontail VA. I'm sorry to Cotton for the way I've avoided her and turned down collabs together for a situation that had nothing to do with me. I thought I was being a good friend to someone I was close with, but it was unfair to treat her that way. I did not agree with her how Red included her name in this deal with Nano, and I wouldn't have let to him if I knew about it, regardless of how I felt about her at the time. Red. It was wrong of me to ask Nano not to work with Cotton. It was a spur of the moment thing, and after hearing about the situation she was involved in, I took it upon myself to do what I thought was right by another friend. Cotton's always been nice to me personally, and she didn't deserve that. I'm sorry. Nixu. Nixu deleted a tweet and with her document about me. She shouldn't have, because she was right. I am going to include it here for reference, but I've left it out because of what she wrote in it. So instead, I summarize the situation below. Second, I don't want any kind of public reaction to this. I really do not want to appear on videos or similar. I do not want my case being used as an excuse to put more hate into it. I just want to share and let it out my chest. I'll probably delete it in the end. Nixu, or at Iomaya AF, is an artist that reached out to me via email about making artwork in exchange for showing it off and giving a shout out to her Patreon on stream. I hadn't seen the email, but she made a tweet laying out her terms, tagging me in it. I messaged her that I was interested. I put her in contact with Red, and he handled things from there. Through Red, we made our agreement. It wasn't until she had a large portion of the sketch finished when I had changed my mind about our agreement and didn't want to do it anymore. I don't know what was going through my head or what my reason was for this, but I told Red to call it off. Red tried to make it seem like there was miscommunication somewhere to save face for me, but it was really because I was being unprofessional. You got that right, Cinder. Go and tell her yourself. He talked to me, and I agreed to follow through with the art showcase and shout out on my stream. However, I failed to follow Nixu's terms as they were agreed upon. I didn't verbally shout out her Patreon and only showed the link to it that was on her artwork. I also didn't show the censored NSFW version of the art, but that was because I was worried about getting in trouble with Twitch. This was an unprecedented situation I caused with this artist, and I've never done something like this with anyone else. I handled an agreement I made extremely and regrettably unprofessional. This was the way out of character for me. And I'm sorry to nix you for how I handled things and for the stress I caused her. I encourage anyone reading this to please support her and her incredible work. And yeah, that's technically where we come to 19 pages in total. We're just talking about, well, apparently, um, Cinder taking accountability. Can we just point out that when it came to the last one, she didn't even think to leave links to tell people to go and visit her artwork or anything like that. Yet she encourages us to go and support her artwork anyway, but without leaving or even showcasing what her artwork was. Yet she felt it was a bit more important to show off her nihilist cosplay or whatever it was. Yeah, so out of all of this, there's been a long series. There's a long thread of unprofessional conduct, and despite the fact that Cinder and Red were claiming that they were working all the time, releasing stuff and then saying that they don't view other people as competition, despite evidence to the contrary, in this very document, it didn't stop them from behaving incredibly unprofessional and also kind of rude, especially the thing with Tricky really does kind of rub me the wrong way because who would just abandon their friends their friend in a massive foreign city? Yeah, and and just by addressing it, that's apparently Cinder's way of taking accountability by saying that. But as I said before, it's all well and good, but the problem is, Cinder, you still did it, and just saying sorry again. It's the equivalent of somebody coming up to me, cutting my arm off, and saying, "I'm so sorry for cutting your arm off." Well, my arm's still cut off. You know what I mean? What do you? How do you think that's going to just fix it? Just because you say you were sorry, but if you were sorry, you wouldn't have done it in the first place. And then, of course, you get Red, and part of me feels as if he was just trying to justify most of this. Well, not justify, but rationalize this, but in the worst way possible. Because this is starting to sound like Cinder's apology. This really is starting to sound like old hat. And probably not. It's probably, but it probably would have just been a better idea to have moved on. Perhaps this entire, this whole response document is kind of a mistake in my opinion. But with that being said, next week, well, tomorrow I should say, we move on to Exhibit C. So, all aboard!